Okay, today is lesson 7 on Switzerland. We are off to Switzerland, the land of chocolate, cheese, and clocks. I can't wait to discover all the amazing sights and tastes we will encounter here. But first things first, we need to buy an unlimited rail pass from Europe and hop on the train. Switzerland is known for its beautiful mountains and scenery. So should we take the day train to see all the scenery or the night train and sleep so we can just enjoy Switzerland when we get there? So many choices. Some quick facts of Switzerland are that it has a population of 8.6 million. The government type is federal democracy. The size of the country is 15,942 miles. The capital city is Bern. The official languages is Italian, French, German, Swiss German being common, or Romish. The famous landmark is the Matterhorn. You might remember the Matterhorn at Disneyland. That's probably made after this particular mountain. Looks like it. Land and animals. Switzerland is a land of many beautiful features. 60% of the country is covered in mountains, but nestled between the peaks in a hilly plateau that is home to many beautiful towns and stunning lakes. In fact, there are about 7,000 lakes in Switzerland, and it doesn't matter where you are in the country, you will never be more than 10 miles away from a lake. Many of the largest lakes in Switzerland extend into the neighboring countries. Lake Geneva, for example, is the largest lake in the country, but extends into France as well. There are many different kinds of wildlife living in the mountains, plateaus, and lands of Switzerland. One bird that was hunted to extinction in the 19th century, but has been reintroduced in the last 30 years, is the bearded vulture. It was once believed that these large birds killed sheep, horses, and children, so they were hunted until they were gone from the mountains of Switzerland. After much research, we have learned that these huge birds are not to be feared after all. They feed almost exclusively on bone, not on sheep, horses, or children. They throw large bones onto the rocky slopes until they break apart. They eat the marrow of the bone first, and then the pieces. These unique birds have huge territories of 77 to 154 square miles, which they fiercely defend from other vultures. These magnificent creatures stand 3.77 inches feet tall and have a wingspan of 8.8 feet. Now about that famous landmark. The Swiss Alps' iconic peak is none other than the Matterhorn. It is one of the highest peaks in the Alps and boasts a distinct and beautiful shape that is recognized worldwide. Located on the border between Switzerland and Italy, it is a dangerous climb at 14,692 feet high. The first time it was climbed in 1865, and there have been over 500 people that have died climbing the mountain. On average, 12 people dying trying to climb it every year. Because of the steep faces of the mountain, only small amounts of snow accumulate on him, but there are frequent avalanches and falling rocks that pose dangers to climbers. Ulrich Imberbein was a mountain guide that climbed the Matterhorn 370 times. His last ascent was at the age of 90. He retired from guiding at 94 and lived to be 103. Food. Chances are when you think about Swiss food, all that really comes to mind is Swiss chocolate and Swiss cheese. But do the Swiss people really live off chocolate and cheese? Well, not exactly, although cheese is common in many of the traditional dishes. Fondue was originally invented to make a hearty meal of bread and cheese in the cold winter months in the mountains. Although this classic Swiss meal has evolved over the years, and there are endless varieties of fondue available. Dunking bread in melted cheese will never get too old. Another common cheesy meal is a raclette cheese, grilled slowly and sliced off to cover boiled potatoes, pickles, and onions. While this delightful tradition began grilling cheese over a fire, today there are raclette machines that make the delicious tradition accessible in modern homes. If you're looking for a Swiss meal for the lactose intolerant, you might like to try roasted flour soup or Meljasup. Not sure of the pronunciation of that. Roasted flour soup is made with flour, butter, onion, and beef stock, and although it is generally topped with Gruyere cheese, that could be avoided if necessary. Another popular Swiss dish is rosette. Rosette is comparable to hash browns and is made with thinly grated potatoes, pan-fried until crispy. They were originally served for breakfast, but can be eaten at any time of the day now. They go beautifully with bacon, fried eggs, pickled onions, gherkins, and, of course, raclette cheese. History and culture. Switzerland is well known in the world for being an incredibly safe nation with a history of neutrality. That means that it does not go to war against other countries. It may seem strange, then, that the government requires mandatory conscription and military training for all males over the age of 20 for a minimum of 18 weeks of boot camp with subsequent required training. This pattern of training has led some to comment that Switzerland doesn't have an army, they are an army. An activity break would be to look up a Swiss Army knife. It was invented in 1891 by Karl Elsner because he didn't like the fact that knives issued to the Swiss armed forces were made in Germany. How many different models of Swiss Army knives are there? What might they be good for? I suggest you look that up. Some of you might have a Swiss Army knife, but look it up. It's really interesting how many things these knives have on them. Although the Swiss people are seen as peaceful and safe, their history would indicate that they are a force to be reckoned with. Between the years of 1400 and 1848, a common extorted skill from Switzerland was soldiering. During those years, it is estimated that more than 2 million Swiss mercenaries, hired soldiers, were hired out by the government. Even the personal bodyguards of the Pope are called the Swiss Guard and are required to be of Swiss nationality. While their outfits look a little like a gesture, they are just following tradition and have maintained their style of dress since the Guard was formed in the 1600th century. The French, led by Napoleon Bonaparte, have been the only country to conquer Switzerland. They disarmed the people, but this did not lessen their resolve for freedom. They fought a war in 1802 against the French with wooden clubs that they called Stecklerig. And, believe it or not, that ends our lesson for today, Lesson 7 on Switzerland.